we're talking about is free content that sells. So, with free content that sells, it's really straightforward. I think I was one of the early uh, pioneers of this, you could say, right? With the Internet Business Manifesto, the Missing Chapter, the Final Chapter, the Attention Age Doctrines, etc. Those reports were all free reports. They were given away for free, and we never advertised them uh, at all. We never spent any money to advertise them, and yet they spread throughout the internet, and they also brought me a tremendous amount of clients. So that's the kind of content that we're talking about. In fact, I had been doing free content that makes the sale all the way back to about 2006, and the and even the idea, like that book Free by Chris Anderson, didn't come out, and I think until 2008 or 2009. Moving the free line, Evan Pagan coined that term in 2008 or 2009 to kind of explain what I was doing. But I think a lot of people kind of got the wrong idea. That the idea being that if you just gave away lots of great content, people will buy your product. And, there was a time where if you were in a business where you sold information, if you had great information, people would search to find more of your stuff. But we don't live in that time anymore. In this day and age, it's not like that. I remember when I was consulting to Brian Tracy that I told him this story of like how I had come across one of his Nightingale Conan tapes. And I was so blown away by it that I then went to Nightingale Conan and bought as many Brian Tracy programs as I could. And that, though, was pre-internet days. And nowadays, where we have so much information coming at us, the likelihood that when you come across something good is enough to get someone to take action is generally no longer the case. And so we have to be a lot more strategic as we develop content. And we have to develop that content in a way that moves people closer and closer to making the purchase, right? And so we've kind of touched on some of the concepts here that I'm going to cover. In fact, I pulled up my very first Founders Dispatch, were which were like off the top of my mind thoughts that I would start every Q&A call that I did for BGS, which I did every week. And so what we did is we took my very first dispatch, which was just me top of the mind talking about a topic, and we turned that into a video. And so I'm going to play that video for you today, where I break down 6 different types of content that makes the sale. And then I thought we could also discuss it more, what that video shares, as well as any questions that you have, how I would go about creating content in a particular niche, your niche, etc., to facilitate making that sale, right? And this is really on the marketing side of the equation, right? It's about understanding what beliefs need to be put in place, what do we need to do to move people out of status quo bias, right? So that they finally take action. But in the belief stage, where we want to be adjusting beliefs so that it supports the sale, we want to do that during our time of marketing where people's resistance to changing beliefs is not as high as it would be in the sales situation. So let's say hello to some people. Not as many people today. I hope. Let me know also if you guys were on Tuesday. Let me know how Matt did. What do you think? Hey, Omar, good to see you, my friend. Hey, Michael. Hey, Susie in North Carolina. Hey, Jason in Tampa. Joe in West Palm Beach. And Hugo from Miami. Back in Miami myself, as I said. Hey, Barry. Good to hear you. Good to see you again. Logan. Logan says she'd be just like Kim. If you didn't tell me I'd be on camera, no bueno. What are you eating over there? Pea pods. Oh, where did those come from? Oh, she got them on the airplane. Uh, hey, Roberto, how's it going? And hey, Milos in Serbia. The documentary is going well, or at least that's what they tell me. Hey, Christian from Mexico and Carlos from Venezuela and Raoun. Is that how I pronounce it? Raoun. Good to see you, Raoun. Uh, hey, Kayvon, and thanks for being flexible this week. Kim appreciates the fact that I don't need to talk to you until next week, so I have more time with her. Tomorrow is her birthday, and we'll be celebrating her birthday. Hey, Annabelle, I know I owe you a call. I've just been swamped, and I apologize for that. Hey, Tom, good to see you, and glad that you're enjoying Steal Our Winners. We just released our July edition, and so it's out there for all of you Steal Our Winner subscribers. We have Brent in Australia. Thanks for getting up so early, Brent. And we have Terry. Hey, Terry, good to see you again, Terry. We have Roberto from Spain. Hey, Roberto. And Pat from Montreal, Canada. And we got Terry, who the famous speaker in Orlando, Florida. So very cool. So as we talk about free content, guys, are there specific questions that you have? Oh, wait, we got a lot more here. Sorry. Matt was awesome. I got a really valuable landing page teardown. Awesome. Very cool. What's up, Rich? First time poster, long time watcher in Aberdeen, Scotland. Hey, Jay. Hey, Eric. Good to see you. And SoCal. And Michael from GPS days. Wow. Hey, Michael. Good to see you again. Glenn from Utah. Good to see you. And Kayvon said that the session with Matt was great. We got Lisa in Miami Beach. Hey, Lisa. You know, I'm in Miami Beach. I'm on Alton Road. Where are you, Lisa? We have Elise in Australia. Jason said Matt did a good job. Happy early birthday wishes, Kim, from Tom Spudek. And we have Ron from Champaign, Illinois. And Kayvon says happy birthday, Kim. And Trevor, Steal Our Winner subscriber. Good to see you, Trevor. Thank you for supporting the product. What about lead magnets? Well, we'll get to that. If that's what you mean as far as, content that sells, right? And we can kind of talk about that right out of the gate. So before I even go to video here, but please, by all means, if you have questions about content that makes the sale, right? Free content that makes the sale, this is the time to put your questions in. And I would tend to think I'm one of the best at this. There's a lot of things I'm not great at, but this is part of my sweet spot. And it's always been very interesting to me when we talk about lead magnets, how most people don't really get that this is your first impression. And so, there have been many books that I've bought where I started reading it. I thought it was absolute crap. And I didn't finish the book, nor would I ever buy another book from that author again. There have been other books, like a gentleman by the name of David Seabury, right? I think it's Seabury, Seabury. I think that's his name. Anyway, he wrote a bunch of books in the 60s and 70s, I believe. I read the first book. I loved it so much, I found every single book that he's ever written. So when you do a lead magnet, you have to recognize that it is really your first impression. And while you certainly don't want to overload people, you don't want to give them too much because then you disincentivize purchase. But at the same time, you can't give crap either, because if you give crap, the likelihood that they want more crap is not high. But just good content in and of itself is not enough either. Someone should be more likely to buy after they read any free piece of content of yours than before they saw that piece. That should be first and foremost, right? So we'll get to lead magnets. We'll go into that. And any questions you have about lead magnets, I'll be glad to discuss. And we have Ned in Maryland. So welcome, Ned. And so let's kind of dive into this. I'm going to play the video now. And while I play this video, it's about, I think it's about 20 minutes long, but it's all content. So I hope that you enjoy it. Let's go to the videotape.
Hi, it's Rich Sheffrin, and welcome to the first Founders Audio dispatch. Now, today, what I'm going to be talking to you about is something extremely important because it's an area of marketing that's essential to succeeding online, and yet so many people get it wrong. And that area is free content. More specifically, free content that actually makes sales. So let me tell you a little bit of the backstory. You see, I was out west a couple weeks ago consulting for a well-known guru that if I gave you the name, you'd certainly know. He's not in internet marketing, but he's been around for quite a long time. The size of his company is about a little over $10 million, and I had been there because they had asked me to come because sales had been flat. More specifically, their launches that they had done were mediocre. The sales from the blog were basically non-existent. The sales from the content emails they sent out really didn't move the needle at all. And even the webinars and the teleseminars that they did really didn't have the impact that they were hoping for. Now, whenever I hear something like this, I'm always thinking that there is a problem in the way that the content is being structured. Or more specifically, the content that's being delivered, is it actually furthering the sale? Is it advancing customers' desires to actually purchase the product that the company, guru, etc. is hoping to sell? And that's the big mistake. You see, the big mistake that this client was making, that I see so many people make these days, is thinking that if we provide really good content, people are going to want to buy our stuff. And it simply isn't the case. And it hasn't been the case for quite a long time because we live in an age where great content is all around us. So the simple fact of giving someone great content doesn't have the impact that it once had when we didn't have great content all around us in regards to actually stimulating the sale. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what type of content actually does stimulate the sale and what type of content actually increases desire. Now, how do you know if you have this problem? How do you know if you need to make sure that you listen to this several times so that you actually make the changes that I'm going to suggest? Well, the easiest way to get a grasp on whether or not this really applies to you is how effective is whatever free content you're putting out there actually generating sales. For example, I'm well known for the free reports that I put out to the public. Well, in each of those reports, I've made millions of dollars based on the sales that they caused. So that's what I'm talking about. If you're putting out content that doesn't stimulate sales, then you really got to scratch your head and ask yourself why you're putting out that content in the first place. And could that content be better? Could it actually create the sales that you desire? And it can. You see, when you create great content that actually does advance the sale, that does create desire, what happens is that you build a momentum in your business where that content that is out there for free for the prospects and your marketplace to eat up and to consume continuously increases your sales, continuously brings new prospects and new customers into the fold. And that's when you have content that is really effective. So let's talk about really why people have this problem. And there's really two different concepts that have floated around the market that I believe really cause more harm than they do good. The first is moving the free line. The concept there is that we're going to give more away than has been given away before. And somehow, magically, because we're doing that, people are automatically going to buy from us. That simply is not the case. If your content doesn't create greater demand, your content is not effective. So the idea of moving the free line, while it's a clever statement, doesn't really capture in its essence what is necessary to create demand and make sales. Now, another popular concept is results in advance, right? The idea is give content that starts getting people results. Now, there is a degree of truth to that. However, most people do it wrong. Most people try and get too much of a result for their prospects or customers in their free content. And because of it, the content is overly complicated. See, results in advance works when you can give someone a very quick way to achieve a result that they've often desired. Yet, at the very same time, still leave open the main goal that is necessary. In other words, you want to get someone a quick result that takes them partially to this bigger goal. And by doing so properly, you've actually enhanced and heightened the desire for the goal. That's when it works. However, I've seen it so rarely done effectively that I put it up there as another big mistake and cause of big mistakes. All right, so let me go over some other mistakes that are commonly made so that you can make sure that you avoid them. The first is nothing but fluff. See, if you don't have some good information that actually moves the needle for your prospects and you're just regurgitating old stuff, then you are, in essence, actually hurting your case because it makes you seem like you don't have anything new to say. So always avoid creating something that really delivers nothing. The next mistake is giving too much. In other words, trying to really move the free line, so to speak, and in its essence, giving way more than you should. You see, you want to leave people wanting more. And when you give too much, you often leave people not wanting more, or worse, confusing them because there are so many competing ideas in what you're presenting, what you're giving, what you're writing, that it doesn't leave the prospect hungry for more. Next big mistake, it doesn't advance the sale. This is the biggest problem. You have to put yourself in your prospect's shoes and ask yourself if reading this makes you want to know the author more, if watching that video makes you want to learn more about whoever's in the video or the content in the video, or whatever mechanism you're using. In other words, you want your prospects to consume whatever content you're putting out, and by the time the content is done, have a greater desire for your product. And most people don't accomplish that. Now, have no fear, because I'm going to tell you the type of content that will do that, but we're not there yet. We're still going over mistakes. The next common mistake is common knowledge. You don't want to just repeat what's already known, because by repeating what's already known, you put yourself in a position where it's assumed that your product will just be more of that common knowledge, and that's never a good thing. The next mistake, being boring. You never want to be boring. In fact, being boring is the quickest way to not only lose customers, but lose prospects as well. The next mistake, being overly complex. You want your prospects to believe that the solution to their problem is actually simple once they have your answers. And by providing content that's overly complex, the logical assumption is that your solution will be overly complex. So you want to avoid that too. So those are the negatives. Nothing but fluff, giving too much, not advancing the sale, providing common knowledge, being boring, and overly complex. Now, let's talk about the right way to do it. The right way to do it is, first, I'm going to go over the qualities. Then I'll give you a bunch of examples of the right approach. So let's talk about the qualities. The first is supporting the core concept. In fact, if you've determined your core concept for your campaign, for your product, it's almost impossible to go wrong. Because as long as your content supports the core concept, you are in fact moving and advancing the sale. And that's why the core concept is so vital to effective marketing. I've been saying recently, if you're a BGS member and you've caught some of the Q&As I've done, that really so many people are familiar with the unique selling proposition as it relates to sales. Well, if you're familiar with that concept, then just think of your core concept as the unique marketing proposition. In other words, it's the sole focus of your marketing, and the two bridge and marry together. So all your content effectively should actually support your core concept. Next, the next quality that your free content should have is it should create the appearance that it's the tip of the iceberg for your knowledge, for your company's solutions. In other words, you're not giving and giving all you have. You're giving a small piece that is more than what your prospects know, but actually quite insignificant to what you know. The next is social currency. That is that a concept that I don't think many of you are familiar with, but I think it would be beneficial for you to be familiar with. Social currency is like a joke. When I tell you a joke and you remember it, it's currency because now you own it. When you tell it to other people, it makes you seem funnier or more interesting. So it's a form of currency in the sense that it has value. So when content actually supports social currency. It's that there's information in the content that makes the reader or the consumer or the audience actually more interesting because they know it. Now, why is that vital? Well, the ideal scenario is that by giving your prospect information that makes them more interesting, when they share it, they create a viral effect for your content. You see, most of my free reports have had that element engineered into it. That's why my reports have gone so viral. Because after someone finishes reading it, they feel like they know more, that they have some interesting things to share with their friends or peers or readers of their blog. And so they write about it. They talk about it. They share what they've learned. And when they do that, they bring more people to download my reports. So that's social currency. And lastly, the simpler the better. The fact is that people are not going to work very hard to get through any free content or even paid content. So when it's simple, when it's got one big idea, it often has much more success. So those are the qualities of positive, powerful, and profitable free content. It supports the core concept. It gives the feeling that you know a lot more, the tip of the iceberg. It has an element of social currency, and it's simple but powerful. So with that stated, how are some effective ways that you can actually create content that makes the sale? I'm going to give you different types, and then I'll brainstorm different ways to potentially incorporate that. The first way is to give a new perspective for your prospects on their problems. In other words, they think their problems are X, Y, and Z, and you show them that either there's a deeper reason or there's a common misperception about what the real problem is, etc. This has tremendous power because people love to gain new insight on their problems. If you'd like to get an example of that, you could take a look at the Internet Business Manifesto, you could take a look at The Missing Chapter, or you could take a look at the final chapter or The Uncertainty Syndrome, the Entrepreneurial Emergency. All of those provide a new perspective of the problem. Next, you can provide content that shows a big mistake that the entire marketplace is making. In this particular case, I would point you to the final chapter. Now, why do I say the final chapter? That's the last of the manifesto series. Because I made the case that then, in the final chapter, as I still believe today, that the majority of marketers make the mistake of being too focused on the back end and not focused enough on the client acquisition process. And therefore, that was the big mistake that I felt the market was making. But it could be anything if you really believe that the market is making a big mistake. I remember when I first got involved in internet marketing, John Reese wrote a quick little newsletter about the mistake the market was making trying to find niches that had been untapped as opposed to going into niches that had heavy competition because you could find better joint ventures there. That's another example of a big mistake that the market was making. So how do you find them? Well, you take a look at all the common assumptions made in your marketplace and you think about scenarios where they might be wrong. And when you find them, if they relate back to your core concept, and if there's an element of social currency, and you can provide it simply, you're off to the races. Next, another great type of content is when you take something that is originally thought as complex and you make it simple. There are many examples of this. In fact, I'd like to think that this audio that you're listening to right now is trying and effectively taking something complex, content that actually makes the sale, and making it somewhat simple by telling you what to avoid and what to do. This is great because it shows that you have expertise, and it shows that there's value in your advice. So what can you make easy that your prospects or customers think is complex? Oftentimes, you can think of a step-by-step format that no one's articulated yet, and in and of itself, the fact that you've broken down the steps makes it simpler to get the result that your prospects want. Next, you can provide a story that supports or illustrates your core concept. These can be case studies, these can be testimonials that are expanded out, but ideally, you want to show either how people often make a mistake or how people who figure it out get things right and get the positive results. So what kind of stories are out there, true or non-true, that you can share with your marketplace that create the revelation the aha, the epiphany that your core concept supports. Next, new research or results from studies that support your core concept. You'll notice I use this technique often, both on the blog and in many of my reports. In other words, I'll say something like parents are not spending enough time with their kids. That's an assertion. And then I'll share a study, like the study that showed that the average working parent spends 2 to 3 times as much time with their email than they do with their kids. That helps reinforce my point. So you should always be on the lookout for research or results from studies or surveys that support your core concept. Next, an urgent opportunity. Anytime there's an urgent opportunity that can be seized upon by your prospects or clients, like a hot stock or some fundamental shift in the economy or a new approach to anything that relates to the results that you provide or the product that you provide, it's a great message to put out into the marketplace because of its urgency, therefore creates greater urgency to buy your product. Next, a new method of achieving their goal or a step towards their goal. In other words, oftentimes you can provide a shortcut or an easier way to get part of the way to their goal, and that would be really the results in the advanced concept. That if you can give a new method for achieving a step towards their goal that is simpler, easier, and more effective, you not only expand your expertise, but you also increase your prospect's desire for your product. Another great type of content is to eliminate objections. In other words, think of all the objections that people might have to buy your product, and then take one single one and refute it. Refute it in a way where it's interesting, compelling, and you often have the fundamental of a good piece of content. And so those are the best ways off the top of my head to create content that makes a sale. Let me just run down them again. A new perspective of the problem, a big mistake that the market is making, something complex made simple, a story that supports or illustrates your core concept, new research or results from studies that support your core concept, an urgent opportunity, a new method of achieving the goal or a step towards the goal, eliminating objections. So those are just some of the ways. And these were some of the ways that I shared with that guru on the West Coast who had that $10 million business. What we did is we looked at his content from his launches, from his blog, from his content emails, and from his teleseminars and webinars. And we redesigned and re-engineered one blog post, one area of content from an upcoming launch, one email, and one webinar. The client then expanded on those examples and actually tweaked all their content going forward. And while I can't say that this will make the biggest difference in their business, I'm pretty confident it will. Because the initial results show that when they made these changes on the next launch, their sales on that launch doubled. The emails were 300% more effective, and the blogs were starting to make sales like it never had been before. So those were the initial results. And I would assume that this guru will have a $20 million business in quite a short time. So it's pretty profound. So what are the takeaways for you? Well, my suggestion to you is take a look at your content, the free content that you put out, and ask yourself, is it really advancing the sale? Put yourself in your prospect's shoes and consume the content and ask yourself, do I have a greater desire to buy the product now that I have gone through this content? If the answer is no, it begs the question, why not? And it begs the action of fixing it so that it does. So there you go. So stay tuned for the next several updates from me. You'll be very happy that you did, and your business will improve because of it. Till then, it's Rich Sheffrin signing off.
So there you go. So believe it or not, how long ago was that? That must be over a decade ago when I recorded that. And like I said, it was just off the top of my head. We decided that I was going to start doing these updates, you could say, at the beginning of every Q&A call that I do, just what's on my mind. And for whatever reason, I had just gotten back from California working with a specific guru. So I guess that's why it was fresh in my mind at that time. All right, so I saw that there were some questions that came in during the playing of that video. It's kind of weird to play a video during a live stream. Or at least it felt weird, me sitting here watching the video with you. But nonetheless, I am back now, right? So it's now a live stream once again. So okay, I'm just scrolling here, looking at what the questions were. Okay, so let's attack this question first. Is the core concept like the big idea? So the big idea, right, was really, in my opinion, the way that we use it in direct response, was really kind of pioneered by Bill Bonner. That's not to say that David Ogilvy didn't also talk about having a big idea, but but what Bill Bonner did was really make it much more practical and precise and really designed for selling. So the big idea is a something that is new, interesting, right? Something compelling, something that gets people to lean into the sales message. And the way we do it at Agora is it's the most important piece of the copy. That literally, if a copywriter has 8 weeks, they will spend 6 weeks on the idea, 2 weeks to write the copy once the idea is crystallized. Now, so the question is the core concept, something I mentioned in the video, is that the same thing, or is that like the big idea? It's not the same thing as a big idea, but it is similar to. So let me kind of explain what the difference is. First off, the core concept relates to marketing. The big idea, for the most part, relates to advertising, and there's an important difference there. You see, a big idea has to be inherently sexy in a succinct, short way. A core concept does not, right? Like, so the core concept of, so before I try and explain it from that angle, though, let me try and explain it from a different angle, because this is really the best way. Every sales letter, for the most part, has a USP, a unique selling proposition. Of all the people that I can buy from, why should I buy from you? That's what the USP is, unique selling proposition, something unique that relates to your proposition when you're selling. So it occurred to me that if I have a unique selling proposition as the core of my sales message, then I should have, as the core of my marketing message, a concept, a belief that, if fully embraced, would make the default decision the buying of the USP. Okay? So if I convince someone that opportunity seekers fail and strategic entrepreneurs succeed, and that they're an opportunity seeker, and my coaching program, BGS, Business Growth System, is the only coaching program that transforms opportunity seekers to strategic entrepreneurs, and right now you think you're an opportunity seeker, there's only one place to go, because there's only one program that even makes that claim, and that's BGS, right? That's the Business Growth System. So, if I can convince you that you spent your whole life adding more potential, but never addressing the constraints that prevent you from tapping into your full potential, right? And that's why you're not where you want to be, then that would be the core concept of a program where the USP is theory of constraints to find your most pressing constraints in your business and your life. So the idea is that you think of, what is the big promise of your product at the end of the day, right? What is the unique promise of your product? And then think about, what would make that the default decision? Whatever that unique promise is, whatever that big promise of your product is, what would someone need to believe in order to make that the default choice? And that's the core concept. And it's similar to a big idea, but it doesn't have the same requirements as a big idea, because a big idea has to be inherently sexy in and of itself. I can come up with really good core concepts. It's one of the reasons why I've always used marketing to make selling superfluous be, um, and develop core concepts. Not that it's easy for me, but easier. I'm not a great copywriter. I cannot write front end copy that grabs people by the lapels because that's more a big idea thing. So it's really a big idea is a more evolved, you could say, core concept, and it's designed for selling as opposed to marketing. And therefore, it has to be more evolved because it has to be more slick and slippery. It has to get in. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. And if it doesn't, then ask a follow up question. But I hope that answers the question, Jay. All right, let's keep going. All right, so um, I have an entertaining, if you say so yourself, Richard, and highly skilled prospecting call recordings, thinking to post them on my YouTube channel. I could subtitle what the techniques I'm using on the calls. My audience is realtors, intention to drive prospects to my coaching company. What do you suggest? Well, I would only suggest that, Richard, if you are, if the calls are powerful, if they result in sales, if you're doing things that others would be like, why did he even say that? Um, then possibly, but I wouldn't necessarily believe that just if someone watched or listened to those or watched and listened, um, that that would be enough for them to say, I'm buying this, right? So what that I would think that putting up those call recordings would be more proof and example of something that came before it. Hopefully that helps. Although, Richard, what I would say is that that it's your job, right, at the end of the day, to connect the dots for prospects, your prospects. So you have to explain why you're sharing these calls, what they should learn from it, and what the takeaway is for them. And that takeaway should be a takeaway that moves them closer, right, to what your promise is. Hopefully that helps. Um, the one big idea reminds me of the Todd Brown ebook. Yeah, well, Todd learned the big idea from Agora, and Agora's been doing the big idea since Bill Bonner started the company. Um, John says, I think it's about how the customers move forward as a company you're moving ahead with. Not bad. Would you hire a sales copywriter or a content writer for this type of content? Any tips you can share on hiring the right copywriter for this task? Well, I'd say that um, I think that a good copywriter obviously could write this stuff, but you're going to have to arm them with the right content. Like you're going to they unless they know your market well, the likelihood that they're going to come up with stuff that is going to resonate at this deeper level for your prospects, um, not very high. They're not going to do the work. And so I'm going to tell you like a story in a little bit that'll, I think, help explain it a little bit more. But, obviously, someone who's a good writer uh, can make it a more compelling read. But the content, like what ultimately is the content that's going to drive the sale, uh, some copywriters certainly could do it. There's no question about it. But whether they would do it and whether it'd be worth their time, I'm not sure. Uh, but as we progress through a little bit more, Hugo, feel free to ask further about that, and I'll be glad to. Okay. All right. Jason has a question. We sell medical equipment and supplies to doctor's office, the high-end products the doctors choose, and the rest a member of the doctor's staff can choose. They are both professionally trained. So, what type of content would you suggest to target the doctor or the small staff member. Okay, well, you have to think, Jason, about what's the end goal for either of those two people, the people in the office or the doctor, and what type of content then would address those goals, would explain something in a different way. And so we'll get to counterintuitive, we'll get to some of these things that we can kind of go over, but the idea is that you have to help the doctor or the staff make more connections in their head with what it is you offer and what it is they want. And that bridge between what you offer and what they want, that your content needs to make that bridge. And that, without knowing more about, what specifically in the medical field, what those doctors' goals are, what the staff in the doctor's office is, I can't tell you exactly. I hope that helps, though. Okay. Okay. Where can we get all the reports, Rich? Thanks. Geez, I don't even know where you can get all the reports. They used to be in our platform. Um, we will make sure that we post them in the Facebook group. How about that? So if you're a member of the Strategic Profits Facebook group, which is free, so you all should be a member of it, then we will post them over time there. There's most of them are all people give away for free, even though they're not supposed to. But that's the Internet Business Manifesto, the missing chapter, the final chapter, the Attention Age Doctrine 1, the Attention Age Doctrine 2, the Maven Manifesto, and the Uncertainty Syndrome. Those are all of the free marketing reports. They're very different than the paid reports, and I would go as far to say that they're better written than the paid reports. They're also written in a way where they should be a much easier read than the paid reports. Because my goal in the marketing reports, in these free reports, is to change some of your beliefs and change them in a way that is helpful to you, but also moves you closer to making a purchase from me. So I'm not going to give you a bunch of exercises. I'm not going to give you a bunch of hard work to do. I do that in the paid reports because at that point, you're a customer, client of mine. I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that you know everything you need to know to get the outcome. And now I'm not so concerned about whether you're going to be able to breeze through this report, whether it's a simple, easy, quick read. I'm more concerned with the outcome. Whereas in the marketing side, I don't want there to be any roadblocks. I don't want there to be any speed bumps. I want there to be as minimal friction as possible for someone to get to the end. So from that standpoint, that is the difference between my free and paid reports. But what I will tell you is that I worked extremely hard on all those free reports to make sure that I did my best job I could so that anyone who read it, whether they bought from me or not, would feel like they got great value from it. And that, I would say, has probably been the number one thing that has made the biggest difference in the content, the free content that I've developed, is this basic kind of embracing of that if you're going to reward me with your attention, I am going to reward you back with content, hopefully, that you've never heard before. And because you've never heard it before, it will help you lean in more. Now, that was really easy to do 10, 12 years ago, right? Just because there wasn't any, whatever I created was new, right? But I've been on many webinars where people who have been coached by people that were coached by me. So like you could say like my grandchildren, as far as gurus go, them selling a coaching program and using some of the same kind of pieces of content that I developed 10, 12 years ago, which is interesting. but nonetheless, that counterintuitive part is critical, and we will hopefully get to. Well, I don't know why we wouldn't get to it since I'm in control of this live stream. So, yeah, we'll get to those. But if you're not a member of, oh, wow, if you're not a member of the group, please join. It's free, and you'll get access to Not only will you have access to all my free reports, but you'll also have access to a few of my paid reports that are in there as well as a bunch of videos I've done. In addition to these live streams, I've actually posted a bunch of videos, like a 20-minute breakdown of why Agora uses newsletters as the front end and why I feel newsletters are the ideal front end product. And so there's a 20-minute video on that, plus a bunch more. Anyway, it's all in Strategic Profits. It's a Facebook group. It's very easy for a lot of that stuff to get lost. So you just have to scroll down to find some of the juicy stuff. All right, so this is a good question. Chris, share non-true stories. You don't lie, right? But do you really think like the most successful sales letter of all time, the Wall Street Journal one-page letter, was a true story? That there really were two guys that started on the exact same day at this fictitious corporation? That the only difference between these two gentlemen was that they read the Wall Street Journal, um, and that one became the president of the entire company and the other one became like a low mid manager, and the only reason was because they sold the Wall Street Journal. So you can tell a day in the life story about two people, and if they're reflective of the audience, it's a true story, even though it's not true with a capital T. Um, and so it's not about making up stuff, and it's certainly not about lying. But there are there's a big bridge or a big uh, chasm, you could say, between everything being 100% factual and being a like non-truth, right? So um, discretion uh, is advised, and also never do anything that if it was exposed, you'd be defensive or embarrassed by. That's really the bottom line. That's the way I try and do it. Michael, let's see. Whoa. Okay. I was wondering, or I am wondering, about what companies are measuring the trends when it comes to content consumption, content media. For example, I'm making this up, but it's probably true. A woman in her early 20s will watch but not read. I'm thinking about Rich's reports from about a decade ago, and I immediately start thinking that today most people likely there will be fewer people who will read them because the attention spans keep shortening. Obviously, this really depends on the level of interest, and there will be people reading or watching long form sales letters because of a high degree of interest, especially if they are older or more educated. I am writing this during a video live stream, which is a bit of an answer in itself. It is also always possible to take a look at what the competition is doing and copying the processes from the competitors that are working. I wonder how to do something non-obvious that competition will not think about. Um, well, the so a couple of things there. One, if I were to relaunch, like if I was going to launch a free report today, one, I would still have it as a report, but I would also do it in every other type of medium I could. I would make an audio version of it. I had affiliates make audio versions of some of my reports. They read it, and then when you opted in, they would also send you a audio version and that they created. So, I would have done that myself, plus video, plus, and I would have it in every format because the way I look at it is this: is that when, like, especially during when I first released the Internet Business Manifesto, these numbers are no longer true. Okay, but they were true the first couple of months when the Internet Business Manifesto came out. Every single person that downloaded the manifesto over the first couple of months was worth $150 to me, which means that probably someone who downloaded and read it was worth even more. So if I can get a lead who is interested in reading the Internet Business Manifesto for $5, but yet every single person on average who reads it is worth $150 in initial sales, I'd be a fool not to get as many of those people as possible. And because of that, I would want that message consumed in any format possible. When we first developed automated webinars, right? The webinar was a longer version of the Internet Business Manifesto because I already knew that when someone was exposed to that message, they became worth a lot more money to me. So why wouldn't I have the webinar be some version of that? There's a lot of different stuff in it, but conceptually, it's the same. So I hope that helps, Michael. You want it in every format possible. And my belief is that you should have one primary way that you create, but um, you should then, you know, put that content, repurpose it in as many places as possible. Uh, have great content and have that great content everywhere, as opposed to doing content everywhere all the time. I think that's a big mistake because I don't think most people make enough time for greatness, as something I've shared on numerous of these live streams. If you're getting value out of this, please let me know. Please do an emoticon, a comment, a share, etc. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you appreciate this. All right. Chris said that's a pretty good presentation. Cool. Thanks, Chris. Still great stuff. I do need to listen again. Cool. Mike says great. Thank you. Atomic messaging. Great advice. Thank you. Your stuff, as always, is good, I guess. Rich, are your reports still available? Yeah, they're out there for sure. And we'll put them, like I said, in the Facebook group. My girlfriend must be watching now because there are way too many hearts coming in really fast. So thank you, Kim. It must be you. Unless my mom is on, but my mom would probably make sad faces. That's my mom. Time for me to read the core concept again. Yes, it is. Give them context, not plain content. Yes, Milos, that's a great thing. So, I didn't mention it in that video because this was a concept that was somewhat new to me, or maybe I hadn't even thought of it. No, I hadn't even thought of it when I recorded that video. But shifting the context on someone is something that I've done in almost every report, even when I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. Because the context is decisive, something that we've talked about before. We talked about that study, right, that Malcolm Gladwell talked about in, I think it was blank, but I don't remember now, where, we talked about, the priests, that they could change priest behavior by just telling them you're late and then they wouldn't help people, right? Or broken windows theory. One of the easiest ways to change behavior is shift context. And you should get that immediately unless you are someone that always acts the same no matter where you are, right? So I'm pretty close to that, right? Like I wear black t-shirts no matter where I go, right? But most people don't. And, I wouldn't, my behavior on this live stream is going to be different, right, than when this live stream is done. And one of the easiest ways to, like, if you want my behavior to be changed immediately when I'm fooling around, you can be like, hey, we're filming. Oh, okay. So if you look at like the Internet Business Manifesto, where I talk about the evolution of industries and how they all start out as the Wild West, but then quickly consolidate, and then only businesses survive and thrive, that's me shifting the context. I want you to see where you're at right now differently. I don't want you to see it. I want you to see today as today is the easiest day it will ever be to make money. Tomorrow it will be more difficult. The next day it will be more difficult. That's the context I want you to see, right? And in all my reports, there are some are completely, right? In all my reports, there are some shift of context. But some, like the attention age doctrine 1 and 2, were all about the shift in context. That's all I needed to open and to be the core issue that I used to then move people to the mindset and the beliefs that I wanted them to have. So if for especially you, Milos, because I know you've been on pretty much all these live streams, um, all that conversation about context that we've had in the past is very applicable here as it relates to free content. But thank you, Milos, for bringing that up. Milos, you rock. What is the technology you used to record the video? I'm assuming you're talking about the video I just played. So I what I did was I just spoke it on the phone because this is pre-Zoom days, right? And then someone on my team outsourced it to someone who would create a PowerPoint and animations or keynote and animations for it. So it was basically me just talking. That was me talking on a phone for 12 minutes, I think, off the top of my head, and about free content. And as I heard it, there's a lot of other stuff I could share and would share, which hopefully as we talk, they will kind of come up. I really need to read this again. It's great ideas that may take some work, but I think once I worked it as a difference, it will make a huge difference. Cool. Cool to hear, John. Gabrielle, that was a very interesting way of integrating old and new. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for sharing the presentation, Rich. I also loved your SOW interview with Billy Braz on how to use free content to advance the sale. Really, Gianni, cool. I was worried about that interview only because I like Billy a lot and I think he's got great content. I wasn't sure that we really delivered on the promise of that interview, but Matt thought we did. And now that I hear that you did too, Gianni, makes me feel good. Cool. So basically, people who worked with you 10 to 15 years ago were like 10 years ahead of most competitors online. Wow. Are you still 10 years ahead from the current state of how people market online? Or is it more true to say that this knowledge is evergreen, but people just never learn, are uninformed, and don't learn and improve? I wouldn't say that. Let me get rid of the Facebook thing here. I do really want to get back to the automated, like, get the notes stuff, but I haven't had a chance to get back in touch with Molly Mahoney. Um, so I'm not as far ahead, I would say, as everyone. I'm not as far as ahead as I used to be because a lot of the stuff I've taught have kind of been taken by a lot of people. But as I am now more spending a lot more time online nowadays, that space of being more future focused is already there. I know what's coming, probably better than most, especially because I was doing a bunch of AI stuff prior. But the I would say that there are still a lot of distinctions that people haven't gotten, right? So when I started coaching, for example, I have always taught build a business around your strengths. I've been doing that since my very first business. But nowadays, talking about building a business around your strengths is nothing new, right? I mean, at all. I'd like to think that I helped kind of popularize that. I certainly didn't invent that. It's been around a long time. But or blue oceans. I've consistently created my own blue oceans, and now that's a much more common concept, right? But like the idea of building a business to outfox your flaws and make your flaws irrelevant, for whatever reason, that hasn't caught as much attention from people, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable being able to teach that as well as I could. So there are areas that I teach that people haven't like gotten into, and especially now with AI, the fact that I have AI experience makes it a little different too. So I generally try and stay out ahead, and I think I do a pretty good job. Rich, can you speak to getting into the mind of your target market better, figuring out their internal emotion around the topic or problem you're solving? Okay. So let's talk about that. I want to tell you about two stories. One is was an experience I had with a client of mine. Actually, the client that bought me my first iPad, and the other is my own personal experience. Okay, so let me tell you what this is all based on, and I think some of you have probably heard this story before. So I apologize if you're hearing it again, although maybe some of these messages, by hearing them numerous times, will sink in more. The So when I left New York in not the best way, and you can tune into the documentary to hear all about that. But so much so that when I first got down to Florida, and my personality had changed, and not in a good way. And so I went to intensive therapy. I don't remember now if it was 2 or 3 times a week, only for an hour each time with a psychologist to just get back to my old self. And uh, went for like, I think it was like 6 months. And then I finally kind of had worked out all the rage that had been built up by getting screwed over in some deals. Anyway, um, but in my last appointment with my psychologist, he said to me, I think you might have ADD. You might want to go check that out. Now, that literally went in one ear and went out the other ear. And the reason it went in one ear and went out the other ear is that I tend to hyperfocus. And I didn't know at that time that hyperfocus is also a a symptom, or whatever you want to call it, of ADD. Because when I hyperfocus, I tend to be able to focus better than most, if almost everyone I know, and for longer periods of time. So I always thought ADD. Like, I spend all my time reading. I'm like, I don't, that just doesn't seem legit. So I didn't believe him, and so I didn't do anything. And then several years later, when I was in Boca Raton, and I was in a Borders bookstore on 441 and Glades, and on one of the corner racks, Driven to Distraction was there. And so I picked it up and skimmed it. Now, I have to kind of explain to you that before I skim that book, right, like I do have a lot of ADD type of behaviors. I tend to overlook details. I tend to be pretty flaky. I can procrastinate. I'm a perfectionist, right? Like I get a new planner, I use the planner. I think it's like the world's greatest gift. I'm finally like productive. And then a month later, I stop using that planner, and then I switch to another planner, and I switch to another planner, right? This is what I do. And there were all these things about myself that I had tried to change over the years and was unsuccessful in doing so. And so now I'm looking at this book about ADD, and they're mentioning all these things that I've tried to fix, and they're saying that these are symptoms of ADD. So I feel as if this book is describing my situation. For the first time in my life, I'm feeling like this book is describing me. I feel more understood. And they're talking about the problems that I've struggled with for years. And they're telling me that these are symptoms of ADD. Now, just for the record, right? That's the only thing ADD is a bunch of behaviors. That's it. There is no blood test for it. They can't test, right? So all it is a bunch of behaviors labeled as ADD, right? So, but in the moment, right? Like I'm reading this book, I feel understood. It's describing my problems. It's telling me that my problems are actually symptoms of ADD. They're not like problems that in and of themselves like are just problems. They're actually symptoms of something deeper. And in that moment, I had newfound hope that I could now actually get rid of all these things that had bothered me for years about myself. Not only that, these were all symptoms of ADD, which meant that if I could like get a handle on my ADD, I'd get rid of all these problems that I didn't like about myself. That didn't happen, but that moment of feeling understood, recognizing that what I thought the problem was totally different than what the real problem was, is that experience that I had with Driven to Distraction is the experience that I try to create in my free reports, right? Michael Gerber did this unintentionally with the book The E-Myth. You open that book with problems, whatever those problems are, as a small business entrepreneur. And by the time you're somewhere in between, in the middle of that book, what is explained to you is that all your problems are systems problems. All the problems that you have that you think are this or that are systems problems. The system is the solution. So, E-Myth, the book says you think your problems are X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and but really they're all symptoms of a non-systematized, non-franchised type of business, right? Or the Now Habit. The Now Habit was a book about is a book, not was, about procrastination, but has a different theory as to why you procrastinate, and then has a different solution because of it, right? Getting Things Done by David Allen, also different. Like what you think is the problem are symptoms of a deeper problem, that the way we try and organize time, it does not fit with the way we are today and how we deal with time. So all of these are like, you think the problem's X, but really they're symptoms of Y, which I've explained to you before during these live streams, but I wanted to kind of connect the dots for you that that's what I'm doing in my free reports. I'm helping the reader feel like they're understood. I want them to now see their problems in a new way. And that new way is more tied to my product being the solution than it was before. So I had this client, the one that who does pop on from time to time, so maybe she'll be on. But she's the one that bought me my first iPad that then I started using Quick Reader, so responsible for me being a fast reader and all those things. Anyway, she had a course. She was in the video space, and she had a course on video marketing and did very well. And now she wanted to do a course on how to be good in front of the camera. And so, as we're thinking about the different segments on her list, one of the segments, a big segment, are people who already bought her course on marketing through video. So we're thinking about the communication that we want to have to the clients who have bought the course on video marketing on why they should buy this course, right? Now, as we know, most people do not do much with their products, anyone's product, right? The majority don't. You have to work very hard to get people to consume your product. But in the marketing, I'm thinking about the prospect, and I'm now like, they've bought this course on video marketing. Now, some have done it and used it and are doing well, but the majority, we can assume, have not. And so I'm thinking about that person. I'm thinking about that they bought this $1,000, $2,000 course on video marketing. They were probably very excited about it. They probably believe in video marketing. They were sold on the idea of video marketing, and yet they haven't made a video, and they're not doing the marketing. And odds are, if we're going to guess, it's probably because they are uptight, nervous, not comfortable in front of the camera. Okay? So now I'm thinking about a prospect, a specific prospect, one that I'm going to create in my mind, of someone who has this online business or wants to have an online business, is convinced that video marketing would really be the way, and yet can't get over the hump of getting comfortable enough to be on camera, etc. And so I'm now going to try and internalize that frustration. I'm going to try and understand what it feels like for someone who is frustrated with where they're at, feels like video is the way to get out of that frustration, but now is frustrated with themselves because they don't feel they're up to the challenge. And I will imagine that being me and really kind of close my eyes, kind of imagine myself in that situation, in buying the course, getting the course, kind of going through it, getting all excited about starting to market on video, getting, put the camera together, get in front of the video, or camera rather, and never really do anything that I like, and so therefore never release anything. And from there, now I can start to think about what experiences they might have and how to best kind of counter them, right? And with content. So let me know, Ron, if I think it was Ron, right? Yeah. Let me know, Ron. Yeah, it was Ron. Let me know, Ron, if that makes sense. And based on how I'm answering you, if there's a follow up question, and I'll be glad to answer it. Time's going by really fast. Wow, it's 7:15 already. Cool. Uh, hey, Rich, we run a podcast production company aimed at ministries and faith business companies. We have a podcast framework we use for every launch. So do we give them the framework and then sell them done for you? Okay, so that's more you're saying show them the how, but show them the how as a lot so that they decide to go with you. That's one way to go about it. Another way to go about it, though, is to sell them on specific things that you can provide, right? That no one else can. So that would be my preferred way. I don't like just the idea of here's the 50 steps that you have to take. Go ahead, or we'll do it for you. It is an effective strategy. I would not. I wouldn't say that it's not. I just think there are more effective strategies. And when someone is going to hire your company, Michael, and Michael, I don't think you're not in Palm Beach, are you? Because Mike Filsain just told me about a company that's right around me. But anyway, the why should someone choose you? What do you provide? Why are you the best choice for people? And can you take that part, whatever makes you different and better, uh, and make content that leads people to that conclusion, right? This is your chance to set the buying criteria. How are you going to set the buying criteria? So, Michael, let me know. Oh, Michael's got another question. Would you say that someone who is more focused on the big idea is more able to handle the marketing strategy and overall all view versus someone who works better with the details and the different pieces of the marketing plan? I would say yes. To answer your question directly, Michael, yes. Someone who's focused more on the big idea is more the overall marketing strategy. Primarily because, part of the whole reason I came up with the core concept was that there should be one underlying theme to your entire marketing campaign, knowing that most people are not going to consume all your messages. So if you can imagine that, like, this line is the core concept, every piece of marketing communication is somehow going to touch that line. I need to reinforce that core concept so that even if they read just one piece of my marketing, they would at least be exposed to something that I put in there to try and get them to buy into the core concept. So hopefully that helps, Michael. Theory of constraints is interesting, and I know you talk about it a lot, and it seems like common sense. Can you explain how to write copy with that without sounding like a salesman or trying hard? Are you saying writing copy or writing copy to sell theory of constraints? Because you don't really use theory of constraints to write to create copy. But I'm not sure that's what you're asking me. You could use theory of constraints to look at what is preventing you from pushing out more good copy. But that's an administrative, right? That's a business systems organization issue. So but it's not like a tool to write copy. Hopefully that helps. The big idea was a thing before Agora. When I used to write TV commercials in the ad agency, we were always judged by does the commercial have a big idea? Yeah, but I get that, Leon, right? Like, because you would say that, like, USP came from Ross or Reeves, right? And melts in your mouth, not in your hands, etc. But what Agora did with the big idea, which is somewhat different, is have an idea, right, that also you could say obfuscates what the product actually is. And that's something that we call categorical dismissal. Because at the end of the day, and I don't know how many there are, I'm not an investment guy, right? But let's say there's 20 ways to make money in the stock market. At the end of the day, there's just 20. You can buy stocks, you can sell stocks, right? You can buy options on stocks, you can sell options on stocks, right? Uh, you know, whatever the 20 ways are. So, one of the reasons why we use a big idea is we want to prevent categorical dismissal. Like, oh, I know what that is. I've seen that before. I don't need that, right? If someone can't say what something is, they can't dismiss it categorically, right? That's the same idea conceptually, not necessarily in application, although here it is, that I used with the mystery box. And it's why it had a 75% upsell rate because you couldn't categorically dismiss what I was offering because you didn't know what was in it. It's a mystery, right? So that removes, you cannot say that doesn't apply to me. Now, you might not want to take the risk, but you can't say it doesn't apply to you because you don't know what's in it. Another way to get to avoid categorical dismissal is to use a metaphor or an idea that is not the exact thing, if that makes sense. So hopefully that does, Leon. But for sure, yeah, the big idea has been around forever. However, the way that we use it at Agora is not necessarily the same as what is for television, although it could be. I mean, I certainly wasn't there and I don't know. What I can say, though, is that the big idea type copy was so effective for Bill Bonner that when Agora first started, when it was an $8 million business, it would write front end copy for other people and split the front end profit. Right? Like that, if anybody who wants to write copy for me, spend their own money to get that copy out there and get me orders, and we're just going to split the profit, I'd do that all day long. Like, why wouldn't I do that all day long? So I'm going to make money and get customers, but that takes copy that's insanely good. One other thing, though, I would say also about the big idea is that you don't get that much exposure to copy that has that if you're primarily looking at copy in internet marketing or Dan Kennedy or Jay Abraham type copy, which is primarily back end copy, which is generally much more direct. You know what the product is. You know that there's a strong benefit right out of the gate. Whereas if you look at Agora, most of the leads are indirect. They're not making the headline does not scream something. I'm going to try and sell you something in the next couple pages. Rich, that's me. Oh. What would you suggest if I want to move my YouTube channel away from how-to videos and start moving the sale forward, yet to build course? I own most of your products. Should I go meta on your free reports or read paid like Core Concept and what else did he say here? Whoops. Like Core Concept, etc. Sean, what I would say, Sean, is one, I'd love to know what your how-to videos are about, right? And then from there, like, start thinking about this. Now, this might not give you the answer. It might give you the answer, though. Why do most people need those how-to videos? What's missing in the market? Why do they need those? What is that a symptom of that they're missing that information? I'd start to look at that so that what your ideal, not always the case, but ideally you're coming up with a hook for this other content that validates, that makes everything that you've done prior seen from the perspective of this bigger idea, right? So that's all that how-to stuff still has relevance. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if you stuck most of your how-to to one kind of area, but even if you haven't, you can kind of think about your prospect and why they would need all this information, or why they would think they would need all this information, or why they wouldn't get the right information. But I'd be very reluctant at first, until I couldn't come up with anything for a while, to come up with anything that didn't tie all the old how-to stuff with where I'm going. Like, I've now like done this. I've gotten all this out of the way so that all the bad information that's out there, you never have to go down the wrong roads. But the bigger problem is X, whatever that is. I hope that helps, Sean. I I'm always reluctant to send someone directly into content before they've actually spent some time trying to come up with a solution themselves. And the reason why is that even if you don't, by doing what I just suggested, when you then look at my content, you'll be looking at it from a very different perspective. Sorry, I keep looking there. It's another one of these big, huge boats that it sounds like they're making lots of noise too. Are there people on the boat? There can't be people on the boat. Another big cruise ship is going by every day. Every day, a cruise ship goes by, but I think they're all empty. I think they just got to move them, keep them busy. Uh, the hidden obstacles report was excellent. Yeah, that's a paid report, right? Okay, so non-true stories remind me of historical fiction. Okay, you could say that. Very helpful. Cool. Glenn Thompson. Love it. Cool. Well, then pass the word. Tell other people to tune in. Great stuff. Cool. Extremely useful. Thank you. Great value. Teresa, you didn't say hello. Glad to see you, Teresa. Love to see you. Glad you're here. Um, Love it, Rich. It's a wealth of knowledge every time I'm able to listen to you. Thanks. Cool. Hello, Josette. I'll have to catch the replay. Yeah, there's a unique video in this one. Jay, love your stuff as always, Rich. I wish you'd re-release Founders Clubs. Those reports are pure gold even today. Thanks. Some of them are like I said, in the Facebook group, and I just haven't like decided that I don't want to update some of those and turn them into a book or something, or I would be giving them all away at this point, or charging for them. All right. When you work with a copywriter, how much of the work information you provide? Would you want him or her to do the research, or would you provide it? Can you give an example of how to go about it? In our onboarding calls, copywriters always talk about the importance of doing research before writing copy, but based on the work I've gotten so far, it doesn't show proper research was done. So it's my main current struggle / frustration. Get it. Um, Well, okay. So, um, yeah, it depends, Hugo. So, ideally, you find a copywriter who knows that market. If they know that market, they don't have to do that much research because they know the mind of the prospect. When I'm working with a copywriter, um, I will generally default to them if I respect them, but I also recognize that I'm going to know more of the mind of the market than they will of my market. And it comes down to something very straightforward. And I know I've said this before, but I really like, if this doesn't land for some of you, uh, I I feel like you're I want to hand you like a gift, and you're not taking it. Um, the fastest way to get inside the minds of your market is to be a coach. Period. Now, that doesn't mean everyone should go become a coach. However, coaching, if you're in a market where you could coach some of your own customers, you should offer it for free, because if you need to, uh, because when you're coaching someone, they have to open up to you. My relationship with the people that I've personally coached, one, is very tight, right? But two, like, that I've personally coached, not just who went through a program of mine. but it's close both ways. Not only in the impact that I've had on them, but the impact they've had on me and what they've shared with me. Um, in order for me to help someone, they got to get real. And when they get real, I'm getting information that no market researcher is ever going to get because people wouldn't feel comfortable sharing that with someone who's doing research. So that's the most direct way, okay? But the next thing is, though, to answer your question specifically, if it's someone who's got a lot of experience in the niche, then I default to them. But if not, then I get concerned, right? Because I've worked with a lot of great copywriters, but they don't know the mind of my market, then they're probably not going, they're going to write to the image that they have of who my person is without really kind of getting it. So, uh, so I generally am involved because I'm not getting like, and top copywriters generally don't, the top copywriters generally don't know the internet marketing community or online marketing as well. That's changed, but I'm talking about A-level copywriters who write for Agora and stuff like that. So the other thing though that I wanted to tell you, Hugo, is that at the end of the day, we're all working for the same goal, right? And I might not use a copywriter again if I'm providing all the great info and we hit it out of the park. But at the end of the day, when I look at that sales letter, they didn't they didn't contribute much, right? But when we're working on a project, I'm going to do whatever I can to make that a successful project. Hopefully the copywriter feels the same. If they do, we'll work together for some period of time. If not, then I might end up doing more work than I wanted to do, but I'm not going to let it just slide. That doesn't mean I'm going to micromanage a copywriter at all, but I am going to want to know, like, I am going to have conversations about the mind of the prospect. And the other thing is, I am going to, like, ideally, all those calls are recorded. The copywriter gets a copy of that call. And that there's follow up to it. I'm always very nervous when I'm working with someone who's writing for me, and we have a meeting, and they don't want to record it because it's like, well, how are you going to make sure that everything that we talk about ends up being impacted? Um, so that would be that, Hugo. And I don't know, Hugo, if you're ever in BGS or not. Um, But in module number one, I believe it was module number one, there was a call that I did with John Carlton where he kind of switched sides and talked about if you're an entrepreneur, how best to work with copywriters. And I can dig that up if you weren't a member of BGS, and we can probably put that in the Strategic Profits group. So let me know. Is the best way to shift context through storytelling? How to not get a prospect defensive when doing that, since essentially you're changing someone's beliefs. Yeah, but you're not. That's the beauty, Stefan. That you're not changing them. You're changing what's around them. So there's very little, like, if you can point to what's happening in the world, then there's very little resistance, right? So I would say that I'm hesitant to say storytelling is the best way to shift context. And the reason I'm hesitant is not because I don't have gobs of respect for storytelling and its power. I certainly do. But I would think actually that potentially a story, but backed up by research, I guess. There's got to be something where when the person knows that, they see things differently. And when they see things differently, that means the context has shifted. So, Stefan, like the example from the Malcolm Gladwell book, right? You're late. There's no story. I mean, I guess you could say there's a story built into that, but you're late is not a full story, right? Broken window is not a full story. So I guess you could say the story of Broken Window is we don't tolerate any crime, right? The story of the You're Late is you're making a bunch of people who are waiting to hear your sermon wait, right? So there's a story, I guess you could say, in all of those, but or like when I was talking about the shift in industries from Wild West to consolidation. Is that a story? I don't know. I have a problem like because there's no. That's more like this is the way the world works than conflict drama kind of stuff. Ah, it was good to listen to you review some important concepts like revelation versus explanation, plus Billy showing the differences in the content his client used to create how-tos, and the new contest focus on creating the right chain of beliefs was really helpful. Oh, very cool. Glad to hear that. I'm going to pass that along to Billy as well. So glad to hear that. ADD can be addictive. Seek first to understand is definitely a great starting point. It's the only way because those are the people you're trying. You got to know what someone currently believes in order to get them to believe something else. How to invite a prospect to a live webinar as an affiliate when you don't have any credentials or made any results for yourself? Can I just rely on the presenter's credentials? Well, it depends on who. It depends if the presenter is that's got crazy credentials. Yes. Um, if not, then what makes that presenter special? What impact did they have on people? You could tell that. There's a lot of ways to do it, but ultimately, your credentials don't mean that much if you're inviting them to get on a webinar with someone else. It would be like me reminding you of all my credentials and then telling you about someone else. It's kind of irrelevant. Outstanding. Thank you. How to invite a prospect to a live webinar. Okay, yeah, I just did that. Okay. What do you mean setting the buying criteria? We are actually in New Mexico. Okay. So it wasn't you then. But setting the buying criteria. Like when someone decides, okay, so let me explain. Okay. If you're going to pick a coach, I would say that the most important thing is you want to look for three levels of proof. You want to look for results that they've done it themselves. Because how can they teach you something that they've not done themselves? Right? So that's first and foremost. Have they done it themselves? One. Two, do they have a long track record of helping others do that thing? Because just because you can do something yourself doesn't mean that you can teach others to do it, right? Now the next thing is did that person do it themselves and do it numerous times? Right? Because just doing it once, maybe you were lucky. Then the next thing is helping others do it numerous times in many different settings, in many different industries, right? And then the third level is have they helped so many people that some of those people had to be in a worse position than when you were. If I'm like, if I wanted to like take a whole big piece of content out about that, right? The problem in picking coaches. What I'm really doing is setting buying criteria there. The whole, whatever I included in that whole thing would be for you to now think about when in the future, when you ever think about coaching, is those three levels of proof and does this coach have it? Because I have it, right? So if I can set that as your buying criteria, then when it comes time for you to make a buying decision, if you use that criteria, once again, I will win because I have the best of those. So that's what I mean. I hope that helps, Michael. Let me know if there's any confusion there. How would be done at the beginning of the presentation, middle, or how? I don't know what you're referring to there, Giancarlo, so you'll have to ask me. Like holding you back. Not sure, Keith, what you're talking about there either. For the customers in their business. Once again, okay, hold on. All right. Whoa, why did that get so small? Jeez. Hold on. Whoops. Sorry about that. Let's see. There we go. I'm just going to make this like that and like that. There we go. All right. Whoa. Jeez. I'm just going to read it. How about that? Oh, no. This is not good. Hold on. All right. Stefan wants to know about free content. Do you give away the how? If yes, how much and how essential? If not, then how not to seem like you're holding on to know how and actually be helpful? As Milo said, this is regarding to the free social media content. Well, all right. So what I would say, I'm going to try and take a short question here just so I can readjust this. There we go. What I would say is that your your thinking about this, Stefan, is a little bit too how what would I say? It's a little bit too it's a little bit too confined. That's what I would say. All right. And what I mean by that, Stefan, is don't only think about the what and the how, because the truth of the matter is that sometimes what is a lot more powerful than how, especially if it's a different what. So, what is my problem? Right? Answer that. And no one feels like you're holding back because a redefinition of the problem in and of itself is tremendous content. If you give someone an epiphany or a revelation or an aha, right, that pro- immediately provides a positive emotion with the inclination for action. That's what a revelation or an aha or epiphany does. None of those have anything to do with house for the most part. More often than not, it's shifting perspective. It's a way of seeing things differently, the problem, the solution, whatever. So I just think you're being somewhat constrained in thinking about types of content and what is often most valuable. Oftentimes, what's most valuable is a redefinition of the problem that has you look, therefore, at solutions differently. So that, Stefan, is where I like to focus. So it's not that I'm like, let me teach you step 2 or 1, or there's 15 ways to do it, and here's one. My preference is to seem as if I'm giving everything because what I'm giving you is a new way of looking at it. So let me know, Stefan, if that helps. It's like, okay, so something else I wanted to talk about too. So let's see if we can get to it. I don't know what I'm having a problem with these for today. I have a relatively good grasp. Yeah, this seems so like, why is this? I don't know. All right. I have a relatively good grasp. I need to figure out why is the picture so big. I have a relatively good grasp about how to create a good lead magnet that moves forward the sale. Can you tell us more about creating good promotional, front-facing content that would drive people from social media, Instagram, YouTube towards a lead magnet? I struggle with doing the contextual approach when it comes to promo content because not giving the how, only what seems dangerous. You know what? We're going to save that, Milos, because I think we can talk about that. And there are ways, and I totally get what you're talking about. And I have some ideas about that. And if you ask me again, like maybe on the very next one earlier, we can talk about that. There are certain ways, and I want to share some that I've come across that I think could be really useful. And maybe we'll brainstorm together some new ways, but I certainly have an answer and a good one too. Thanks. Where was the mystery box? The mystery box was there. We go. The mystery box was in Steal Our Winners, in the promotion for Steal Our Winners. When we did when we first released it during the CSIB campaign. How to invite a prospect to a live webinar? Yeah, you asked me this. I already told it to you, Giancarlo. I hope so. Keith, you would create the current reality tree for your customer prospects. That would provide you with the undesirable effects, problems, and how they are connected to the root cause of your customer. With the CRT in hand, writing would be easier because you'd already thought through your prospect situation, symptoms, problems, and root cause. I hope that helps. Lisa, that's a great answer. Yeah, if you know how to use theory of constraints fully, you could certainly do that, but then you're going to come to the same issue of, do you really know what causes the problems for your prospect, what underlies it? Um, but what Lisa said is spot on, and I did teach that in my Theory of Constraints course, because I will do that. But to know what the undesirable effects are, oftentimes you need to know prospects intimately. Giancarlo, like, do you feel like I didn't answer your question? Because I think this is like the 50th time you've asked it here, or at least like 10 times. I might be exaggerating. Um, enjoy you being here, Lisa. So thanks for being here, Lisa. And hey, Denise, good to see you. Uh, what do you feel are the one or two most important books to consume for learning to write great copy? It depends on who you're writing copy to. Certainly, I love Sean Vossler's book. And I just did a Steal Our Winners call with Sean Vossler. So definitely worth checking his book out. And it's Increase Academy, I think, is the name of his company. So Sean Vossler's book, very one of my quickly becoming one of my favorites. I'd say that I really liked John Carlton's, like, the original binder that came with his, like, kick-ass secrets of a copywriting rebel or whatever. I'm trying to think of the books that made the biggest difference as far as copy for me. What would be the next book? Um, Breakthrough is Breakthrough. Um, yeah, I would say that those two were probably my favorite. Sean's book and John Carlton's. Obviously, when it comes to courses, that becomes a whole nother ballpark. But those would be the two books that I would say probably best as far as writing copy. All right. Have you commented before on the marketing value of challenges? We did a whole thing on challenges about 3 months ago with Michelle Schaefer in Steal Our Winners. So I think it's like an hour. So that's where you'd find it, Gabrielle. And hopefully you're a Steal Our Winners subscriber. If you're not, let me know, and maybe we'll talk about it on some other live stream. Okay, got to jump. Look for the replay. Cool, Eric. Thank you, Rich. I'm waiting for the BGS to be available. Cool, Hugo. Hugo, remind me, and I will put that audio into the Facebook group, because I think everyone should be able to have access to it. And I'm sure John Carlton would like that too. Hey, Nina. Good to see you here, even though you're late. And there's Kim. With your severe ADD, how are you going to focus on Kim all day for her birthday? I probably won't, and I'll probably get in trouble. That's probably what's going to happen, I think. Uh, Nina, hey, I know you're wanting to grow your YouTube. I've been fooling around with it, so I'm not really. I'd like it, but I'd like it to magically grow on its own. And I'm very bummed that I have friends that get like hundreds of thousands of views on a single video, and I'm lucky to get 1,000. I checked out your channel, and there's definitely a few small tweaks you can make to get your views increased and grow your channel. Happy to chat with you about it sometime. I've grown much smaller channels to larger organically. You have some great content, just need more people seeing it. Nina, I would love to talk to you about that. By all means, are you a member? Yeah, I will. I'm going to take a picture of the screen, and we will chat. Not tonight and not tomorrow, since it's my girlfriend's birthday, but I will reach out, because I definitely, if there's some easy things I can do, I would certainly like to do those, Nina. What do you think of being a guest on podcasts as a marketing funnel? I think it's a great idea. I think the idea that Kurt Molly talks about, as far as also using those for a couple dollars a day for people who have already been pixeled to be exposed to, really helps build your authority. And I should probably be doing a lot more of that. All right, earlier from Theory of Constraint. Yeah, I know, Keith, but hopefully Lisa answered your question because it's hard for me to keep track of questions the way I do this. You gotta when there's not that many, it's easier. Yeah, look at this. Okay, I'm going to read this one. Hey, Rich, I have a client who's a plumber, and we're trying to differentiate his business from all the Billy butt cracks out there. um, we recently surveyed our 1,000 customers, and their main concerns relate to reliability of tradies in general. But I need a big idea, something deeper than reliability, to show how he is more reliable than his competitors. How would you suggest approaching this? This is hard for me because I generally don't deal with very many people in these professions. I generally Kim does. What would a plumber have to say to you for you to like? Is there anything off the top of your head? Like, how could a plumber differentiate themselves? Kim tells me that's the worst of all the trades, plumbers. So, um, I don't know much about plumbing, so I'm gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for me to give you a good answer, and it has to be a good answer, not a shitty answer. So Kim's going to think about it and ask me next time, and I might have an answer if Kim gives me an answer. What program are you using to get the questions up there? I thought someone was doing it for you. Nope. It is Ecamm, which is also why the reason I use Ecamm. I like being able to do this with the questions, but the primary thing is I can just plug my Canon right into my Apple computer, and it uses it, and so the image quality is good. Helps a ton. Educating them on how to think about it correctly is more valuable, anyways, than the how. Thanks. Exactly, and they'll appreciate it more, and they'll be more likely to buy from you. Cool. Thanks, Lisa. Can I make my theory of constraints training available in the Facebook group? I can't do that. One, because it's just too complicated to learn it all, as Lisa would agree. I mean, I tried to train people to be a Jonah for in 30 days, an hour a day. So I had to do a tremendous amount of Q&A stuff. But what I would say is that if you want to really understand theory of constraints, you can't go wrong with the books by Bill Detmer or William Detmer. And I would recommend, of all the books I've read on theory of constraints, and I've read a lot, I think there's two books that really stand out. One is by Lisa Scheinkoff, I believe is her name, and it's Thinking for a Change. And the other one is William Detmer. William Detmer is my favorite one, and it's Logical Thinking Processes is the name of that book. It's a big green book. It's a textbook. Um, but those were the most educational ones that I read, at least. Great session today. Appreciate you. Deeper understanding. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think we'll wrap up. Um, I don't want to answer. Okay, so don't want to answer the question of who's the best copywriter alive. I have too many friends who are copywriters. But the the best copywriter that's most recently passed away is Clayton Makepeace. That I don't mind saying. And uh, shout out to Wendy Makepeace. Wendy sent me a pen from Clayton's desk. That from with a propeller on it from a plane or a model because he wanted to write his way to a plane. And I had asked Wendy if she could send me something after her kids had gone through and taken everything from Clayton from their dad. If there was anything left over to send me. And so she sent me this pen and with the thing that goes on the desk. And I just am very thankful that I have something of Clayton's. And if we were still in my office at the house, I would show it to you, but we're not. So let's do a quick recap here. And although I'm going to probably upload this whole thing to YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this on Facebook, please emote, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. All right, so quick recap here. We were talking about content that sells, content that makes the sale, because many entrepreneurs, many marketers, many online entrepreneurs, they create content, they spend a lot of time on it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't only not only not help, it actually hurts. Okay. Anytime you give common everyday wisdom, it makes me feel, and I say me, I mean people in your market, like everything you're going to tell me is stuff I've heard before. That's why counterintuitive content is really valuable. It's not something that we had much time to go into today, but we could spend a live stream talking about counterintuitive content, why it's so valuable, and how to develop it on your own. What we did talk about, though, was the importance of a core concept and why you want that in your marketing, and the idea of shifting context on people and why that's powerful. Results in advance can be powerful, but you don't want to make it too difficult to get. At the end of the day, you have to be very clear on why should someone be more inclined to buy from you after they've consumed this piece of content than before they consumed it. And if you don't have a good reason for it, then odds are it probably won't do the job. So I've spent a lot of time on content that makes the sale for me, and I certainly have had countless people tell me that they wanted to buy my products before I put a sales message in front of them. That is what we're talking about, and part of that is so fundamental is that you have to reward people's attention. If they give you attention, they have to feel rewarded from that attention. And the easiest way to get someone to feel like they were rewarded for their attention was to give them an epiphany, a revelation, an aha experience about their problem. By far, that is the most powerful that I know of, that I've seen, and I've been privy to a ridiculous number of campaigns in the last 20 years in online marketing. So, a redefinition of the problem from everything I've ever seen is the most powerful. So, with that said, I know it's a short recap. I'm not going to try and recap everything we covered, but I've certainly free content that makes a sale has been my primary marketing strategy for the majority of my online experience. And a lot of my free content is responsible for the overwhelming majority of the sales that we've made in the 15 years that we've been in business, at least for Strategic Profits. So, with that said, I think my own track record and my own success along those lines kind of proves the point, right? I even had a video in Google when it was Google Video before YouTube that was in the top 100, which was teaching business, shockingly. Anyway, I will definitely follow up on the person who said that they wanted to help me with my YouTube channel. I would appreciate that. I appreciate each and every one of you. Even though Kim came in yesterday, I told her no matter what, I was going to carve out this time to spend time with you guys, and I'm glad I did. I hope you got great value out of this live stream. I hope you will join me again next Tuesday at 2 to 4, Thursday 6 to 8. Both of those times are Eastern. I will speak to everyone on Tuesday to Higher Profits Beyond. This is Rich Sheffrin over and out, and Kim Deselick over and out.